secularism, in that sense, applies to the democratic world. France, Brazil, Mexico, so many countries have provisions for the separation of church and state. They often breach it, attempt to bridge it, but nonetheless, it stands as a great ideal. And that's our first battleground. And that is when I said to my dear friend who was a skeptic that we cannot be identified as atheists. No, I'm an atheist. We're not an atheist movement. We're broader. We're defending secularism. And, all right, that's the first point. Second point, the secularization of values. Ever since the Renaissance, human beings turned from thinking about divine things to focusing on this world here and now, to maximizing human happiness and fulfillment. And the whole of the modern world has become secularized. It's not only the separation of church and state, but the separation of economy and churches, the separation of sports and religion, the separation of every domain, universities, education. The modern world is secular. The modern world is secularly humanist. And it's the humanization of values and the effort to enrich, fulfill human life that is our central concern. So that's the second sense of secularism. Now, a third sense is that we do appeal to non-religious people outside of or inside of the churches and mosques and temples, to people who are dissenters, who they may be non-theists or atheists or agnostics. So our clientele are non-practicing people out there who are not religious and yet draw upon science, literature, the arts, philosophy for inspiration. Let's go on to the next slide. Now, the Center for Inquiry has, you have to take that thing from the background. Take the cosmos. Yes. I want to define secular humanism. What is secular humanism? When President Reagan, at the 1980 campaign, and his supporters began attacking secular humanism, no one knew what it was. And someone said, it's like Jell-O. You can't nail it to a tree. It's very difficult to define. I founded the Council for Secular Humanism in the United States. We're now worldwide. And we launched Free Inquiry in 1980 and took off right off. And in the last 25 years, we've enlisted many of the leading intellectuals, scientists, doctors, lawyers, ordinary citizens, everywhere. And so let me suggest that there are 6 main characteristics. I call it planetary humanism, a bold new paradigm for secular humanists, atheistic humanists, agnostic humanists. But secular is a broader term, and it seems to me we can gain more people who agree with us if we put it in those terms. First, we're committed to a method of inquiry. That is, we defend freedom of thought, freedom of research, the free mind, the free conscience, the right to know, apart from any censorship, any restriction. And this has been a very difficult battle. Bruno is burned at the stake. Socrates was condemned to death by the Athenians for making the better appear the worse, for corrupting the youth of Athens, for denying the gods of Athens. He drank the hemlock. But there's a whole history of courageous men and women who have battled for freedom of thought. And that's part of our movement. Yes, freedom of thought. You cannot do science. You cannot write literature. You can't engage in political discourse unless you have the right to do so. So that's the first point. And we say, going on from that, you ask the question, what is truth? Pilate allegedly asked, what is truth? And we raised that question. And our answer to that is that the most reliable method for establishing truth claims is based on the sciences. It is scientific, yes, my friend Professor Pete back there. The sciences in the last 500 years have made more progress in deciding what is what about the universe by peer review, by replication, by demanding evidence, by developing theories that are coherent, and making predictions on the basis of that. And that method, methodological naturalism, has stood the test of time. That method has given this great city of Toronto with its skyscrapers, its museums, its universities, its hospitals, its advanced status. The whole of the modern world is based upon science and technology. That is crucial. And what we say is, and what the skeptics say, what my good friend Eric McMillan, who is involved with the Canadian or Ontario skeptics say, is that we need to extend the methods of science as critical thinking to every area of human interest. Yes, critical thinking. Before you accept the claim, find out if there's sufficient evidence. If there is no evidence, then you ought to suspend judgment and be a skeptic. So you look for evidence. Now, sometimes we have to choose on the basis of the best evidence, if we're forced to choose. But nonetheless, we have a model, and that is a model to develop reliable knowledge. It's the use of reflective thinking. It is the educated mind who is willing to raise questions, to doubt before he accepts or she accepts a position. So that's methodological naturalism. But now, second, you can show that, can you just show that one slide, that lovely slide? Second, and there's a tremendous deficiency here. People ask you, what is that? That's the universe. That's one galaxy from afar. People ask you, what is reality? What does it all mean? How does it fit together? And our answer is, probably the most reliable method we have is the scientific method. So we need a cosmic perspective. We call it scientific naturalism. I think the most wondrous discovery in the last 5 years are the 250 new planets out there in new star systems. It boggles the mind. We're not limited to our solar system. You have the Copernican revolution, yes, Galileo, Newton, and others.